Yo, this is Barack Lesnar of Barack Lesnar Hoops. And in today's video, we are going to discuss my top rules for fantasy basketball. If you watch one video from me this season, this is the one you want to watch.
Step on the court where the legends are made. Fantasy dreams where the stats get paid. Barack Lesnar's throne.
Barack Lesnar Hoops Fantasy Basketball.
Before we go any further, do me a favor and smash that like button for me. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, please do. Let's get that ratio of subscriptions up because that really helps push the algorithm. Have a lot of great content so far. I hope you get to check it out. So today we will be discussing my 10 rules to dominate fantasy basketball 2025-2026 draft strategy guide. And I think you know what my first rule is going to be. Target unicorns. So unicorns are players who produce stats their position normally doesn't provide. I talk about this all of the time. So some examples are Nikola Jokic with elite assists, free throw percentage, three-pointers made. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets you 1 block per game from the guard position. Victor Wembanyama gets you a bunch of blocks, gets you a bunch of threes. Chet Holmgren, he's a center that has some perimeter skills, shooting ability, blocking ability. Alperen Şengün, a growing center with some elite passing potential similar to Nikola Jokic. Scotty Barnes, you have an elite wing player that can get you steals, blocks, and a lot of rebounds while also having some scoring potential. The reason why drafting unicorns matters is because it allows you to build some of the strongest teams. You avoid some of the disadvantages and the seesaw effect that happens when you're drafting in category leagues. And this channel is very focused specifically on category leagues. Rule number 2 is really protecting your assist to turnover ratio. That's something that I find incredibly valuable. So it's better to be top 3 in both assist and turnovers than it is to be number 1 in assists and last in turnover. Conceptualize that in your brain. I think that's a difficult prospect for a lot of people to understand. But if you want guys with a good assist to turnover ratio, we're talking about guys like Chris Paul. We're talking about guys like Tyus Jones when he's getting the minutes. Jalen Brunson, Darius Garland is even a decent example. LaMelo Ball, when he is healthy, is another great example of a guy that can help your assist to turnover ratio. It's easy to find assists. It's not as easy to find assists that don't come attached with a lot of turnover. So when you can find those players, I would target them. Rule number 3 for me is to target players that are 30 years and younger. Do not load your roster with 5 to 6 players who are 31 and declining. So if they're 31 and older, they're probably on the downswing of their career versus that sweet spot, players that are 25 to 28 years old. So you're talking about Anthony Edwards, you're talking about Paolo Banchero, you're talking about Cade Cunningham, you're talking about Tyrese Maxey, these young players that still have a lot of upside to continue growing. How can you have upside on your team if everyone on your team is getting worse? The answer is you just simply can't. I'm not telling you not to draft any older players. A guy like LeBron, a guy like Chris Paul, a guy like Brook Lopez. I would target 1 to 2 aging players, maybe a guy like James Harden, a guy like Leonard. The issue is when you draft 5 or 6 of these kind of players, then you're kind of adding a lot of risk and you're really minimizing the upside for your team's potential. Rule number 4. You have to avoid end of season rest risk. And by that, what I mean is the top seeds are going to rest their stars in March. And guess what March is? Your fantasy basketball playoffs. It doesn't matter how good your players are if they are sitting when you need them the most. So some players that you might want to consider, you have guys like the Lakers. The Celtics in the past, not so much anymore with the injury to Jason Tatum. They might actually be a lottery team. There are some rumors that Jason Tatum may come back after the All-Star break, which would be absurd considering he tore his Achilles, but it looks like medical science is really advancing. Nuggets, they tend to rest guys if they're very competitive, which is very likely. Having someone like Nikola Jokic, they might sit him, and he already has a questionable playoff schedule in some formats anyway. So that's something to consider when you're drafting these players. Are they going to be sitting when I need them most? And you kind of have to project what you think their team will do or won't do. The best spot is teams that are competitive and trying to go for the playoffs, because then they don't have as much leverage to sit your top guys, or teams with very young players on a tanking lottery team where all of a sudden they rest all the veterans and they let the young guys play. You also want to have some of those players on your team. So knowing what teams can be bad and knowing what young players they value can help you determine true sleepers that can really help you when you need it most. Rule number 5 for me, punt strategically. The truth is you cannot be great at all 9 categories. Winning 5-4 is better than trying to win all 9 categories and you finish 4-5 because all you did was spread your weakness across every category versus targeting your strengths and minimizing your weaknesses by compounding them all together. What that means is you should be punting based on your first overall pick, maybe your top 2 picks. Your top 2 picks should be complementary. So, for example, if you draft James Harden, then you might want to consider punting field goal percentage, and maybe you want to be a little more lenient with your turnover. If you draft Anthony Davis, then you know threes and assists might be a little hard to come by. That doesn't mean neglect them completely, but you could stack players that really fit his build. If you draft Giannis, punt free throw percent. The biggest mistake you can make, like you draft Giannis and then you spend the next 3 picks trying to save your free throw percentage. All of a sudden, your team is now suffering because your free throw percentage is still bad. And now you combine Giannis with players that don't really complement him versus saying screw free throw percentage, maybe even screw threes, but I'm going to be good at points. I'm going to be good at field goal percentage. I'm going to load up on guys that can get steals, blocks. And all of a sudden, you have a team that's dominating every week, 5-4, 6-3. Rule number 6 is very similar to the rule as far as the age of your players. You want to avoid stacking injury-prone players. At the end of the day, guys, the best ability is availability. So some high-risk players for you are Zion Williamson, Kawhi Leonard, Joel Embiid, maybe even guys that are up there in age like Stephen Curry, Paul George. When you stack too many of these injury-prone players, what happens is if 3 to 4 of them get injured at the exact same time, that is very difficult to overcome. And because they are known as injury-prone players, what happens is they have very low trade value because people don't want to take a risk trading for an injury liability. So not only do they impact you when they're injured, even when they're healthy, the fact that people think they're going to get injured makes their trade value so much lower. Some reliable options, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You will need a top 4 pick to get this guy, but if you can grab him, he's pretty reliable. DeMar DeRozan doesn't miss a whole lot of time and has pretty reliable production. Domantas Sabonis is somebody else that can be reliable and doesn't miss a whole lot of time, is young and still on the upswing of his career. Rule number 7, focus on scarce category. Stop chasing what the herd chases. The herd chases points, rebounds, assists. Everyone's competing for the same resources. What I think wins leagues is when you can be dominant in field goal percentage, when you can be dominant in free throw percentage, when you can be dominant in steals, when you can be dominant in blocks, and you manage to keep your turnovers low. That combination of factors makes you so hard to beat because the secret is percentages aren't volume dependent. Fewer games can actually lead to better shooting, which means if you're managed to win both percentages and turnovers, even if you are outplayed that week, the guy has 10 more games than you, you can still win those 3 categories. And now if you've loaded up on steal specialist, block specialist, and big men that can get you threes, you might still be competitive in those categories and still win the week, even when you've played less games. We've all been in that situation where we have an opponent with way more games than us. And the way I find to win is to focus on these categories and really hone in on your streaming, because when you know which way to stream, then your week goes a whole lot better. And something that I use is a tool called the Fantasy Basketball Wizard Chrome extension. There is a link in my description. And if you use the promo code BLH, you actually get a discount along with some of the other tools that they offer. But I use the Fantasy Basketball Wizard because it lets me know how many categories I'm projected to win that week. So then I know, hey, I'm going to be a little short on steals, so maybe I want to stream a steal specialist and still grab guys that aren't going to make me lose the categories I'm projected to do well in. So a great use of that tool. If you have a chance to check that out, again, there is a link in my description. So some key players that I like to target that really help this build I'm telling you about: Jaren Jackson Jr., Miles Turner, Derek White. I love Derek White so much. He's like the perfect point guard to solidify this strategy that I'm sharing with you. Herb Jones, when healthy, another guy that can get you high field goal percentage, can get you a lot of steals, blocks, and threes. He's a little bit like Robert Covington, a guy I used to love in the past. Rule number 8. I don't know if you've noticed, but the most valuable positions in fantasy basketball and maybe real basketball are point guards and centers. Point guards and big men, the drop off after pick 50 is severe for both. So what you need to do is create scarcity. I like to draft at least 4 centers. If I don't have 4 centers, at least I don't feel comfortable. I often target 5 centers. Okay. I often target 4 to 5 point guard eligible players. And I do target players with multi-position eligibility. That means point guard, shooting guard eligibility, or power forward center eligibility, because it still gives my team some flexibility. I tend to be a little looser as far as forwards. Maybe I'll have 3 small forward players or maybe 3 power forward eligible players, but I prefer that route because on average, it's harder to find really high quality point guards and really high quality centers outside of your draft. And why I really like this is because you can actually corner the market. If you have 5 just amazing centers, you have 5 amazing point guards, all of a sudden you have some very valuable assets, and you have teams, and you can look at these teams and be like, oh, this guy only has 2 centers and I have 5, but he has 7 forwards. That's too many forwards. He recognizes that, you recognize that. So, hey, let me offer him my 5th best center for his 3rd best forward. And now all of a sudden you've strengthened your team. So let's say you didn't draft the big man you needed and you're short. What do? It's quite simple, really. You have to learn how to master win-win trades, okay? A mistake that people make is they think you have to win a trade. There needs to be a winner and a loser. That is not the right way to approach trading. You have to approach trading with empathy. The same way you don't want somebody to try to rip you off, you don't want to try to rip somebody off. Instead, study every single team and figure out which trade partners would win by trading with you the same way you can win by trading with them. Maybe they lack depth, but you have a lot of depth, and you can trade some depth for a better player. They give up a better player, but now their team is stronger and more balanced, which helps them. And now maybe that depth you traded away, you play the waiver wire, you stay consistent, and you can make up for it by picking up a player that can make up what you lost as far as depth. So believing in your waiver wire skills allows you to take more risk when it comes to trades and offering trades that are hard to resist. So target teams that are built the opposite of yours. Your strengths are their weaknesses, and their strengths are your weaknesses. This is how you find the best win-win trades. Having communication and explaining why it's a win-win trade. And if it's really a win-win trade, they might listen to you a lot more than if it's a crappy trade and you're trying to convince them it's not a crappy trade. Don't do that. I'm telling you right now, don't do that. Rule number 10 is trust your draft, but you also have to know when you need to cut bait. Early on in the season, trust your process. Don't panic after one game. Let's say your stud shoots 2 for 12 and a guy on the waiver wire just dropped 50. I know it can be tempting to say, I'm going to drop this guy. He didn't do what I thought, and I'm going to pick up this guy off the waiver wire. That's how you end up giving your gold. That's how you end up giving up the strength of your team, chasing waiver wire flashes in the pan and giving up proven fantasy basketball commodities, okay? Don't chase waiver wire players. Have a few streaming spots. Streaming spots are your opportunity to pick up long-term players. And then what I do is I try to do 2 for 1, 3 for 2 trades to then open up new streaming spots, and you essentially consolidate your strength upwards on your team. That is how you build a very hard to beat team. At the same time, around December, January, that's when players are playing in mid-season form. That's when you really start seeing what their production is going to be that season. If someone's killing you and it's still December, January, it might be time to make the move. There's a point where you just can't be like, oh, I drafted them high, so I just have to hold on to them, because then you could be passing up players that will outproduce that on the waiver wire because you refuse to accept that you lost a pick, that you used a pick on a player that's underperforming. A story that happened to me, this was, I think, Donovan Mitchell's first year, but I held Andrew Wiggins for months, because he was one of my top 70 picks. But one day I said, screw it. I dropped him and I picked up an unknown rookie. That rookie was Donovan Mitchell. And Donovan Mitchell ended up having a rookie of the year type season, which I ended up winning multiple championships because I picked them up everywhere that I could. But had I held on to Andrew Wiggins because I thought to myself, I can't let go of him, I used the top 70 pick on him, I would not have had that experience of taking the chance on a better player. So as generic as this advice may be, you got to know when to hold them and you got to know when to fold. So my bonus tip for you is you have to know your league settings, okay? Is your league a 9-category league, or is it more than 9 categories? Do you have 3-pointers made, or do you have 3-point percentage? Do you have turnovers in that league, or do you have assist to turnover ratio? Do you have total rebounds, or is it split offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds? The settings can determine what players you want to target. If Rebounding is split offensive rebounding and defensive rebounding. Now, rebounding is 2 categories, which means big men that rebound are more valuable in that format. Is it a points league versus a category league? Players that could be studs in a point league aren't necessarily studs in a category league, and it's important for you to know the difference. So a tip, if you're drafting on Yahoo, if you're drafting and you click on rank and it shows you the rank for all of the players, that rank is actually based on the specific league settings that you are in, which can give you a huge leg up, because often what people do in a draft is they just use default at draft position versus using the ranks that are projected for their specific league settings. This is a great way to identify sleepers in the draft that are projected to do a lot better in your league settings than they are being drafted. That is a secret, super solid tip that I really want you to keep in mind. Another bonus waiver wire tip, especially when you're streaming and trying to identify sleepers in the waiver wire, do not use season-long stats. What I like to do, I like to filter by the last 2 to 4 weeks. What have you done for me lately? Who is trending upwards? Who is trending downward? By doing this, you can identify players before they've taken off completely. You might identify, man, this player in the last 2 weeks has gotten starter minutes and he's producing starter numbers, but the rest of the league, the rest of the people, the rest of the fantasy basketball players haven't caught on yet. Sometimes I'll even look at per 36 stats or per 100 possession stats, because it shows me, hey, if this guy gets playing time, he could be really useful. Hey, this guy's getting close to a block per game and 17 minutes per game. If he gets 34 minutes per game, he could be a league-leading type shot blocker. By changing the filters you use to identify talent on the waiver wire, you can really, really hone in on players that can help you dominate. So to recap this video, the 10 rules for dominating in fantasy basketball: target unicorn, value assist to turnover ratio, draft younger players 25 to 28 is a great sweet spot. Avoid rest risk. Punt strategically and try to dominate 5 to 6 categories versus trying to be good in all 9. Don't stack injury risk. Focus on scarce categories. Create scarcity in your own league to give you leverage for trades. Master the art of making win-win trades. Go with empathy, not trying to screw people over. And lastly, trust your draft early in the season, but you also have to know when to cut the bait. Typically, I'd say around December to January, you can get a very clear picture of who's not going to help you in the long run. And again, our bonus, know your settings and filter waiver wire by the most recent production to really identify those sleepers that are trending up and identify those players on your team that may be trending down. So the bottom line, guys, fantasy basketball is logical. Make logical decisions. Follow these rules. Follow these commandments that I have given you. And the end result is you dominating. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor. Subscribe for more fantasy basketball strategy. Hit me with that thumbs up and check out my draft guide. There is a link in my description. I do a deep dive, including the fantasy basketball playoff schedule, which is another thing that I advise you not ignore when you are drafting your teams. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. Until next time, this is Barack Lesnar of Barack Lesnar Hoops. See ya.